So after your big victory last year, if people been under a rock, I guess, and you're in the hunting space and you didn't know about Proposition 127, do I have that number right?
Yep.
In Colorado, that you guys pulled off the victory of all victories on a ballot initiative. Anyone who doesn't know about that must have been out in the space station.
They didn't pay attention.
They didn't pay their power bill or something and haven't been able to listen to radio, TV, podcasts.
Yeah.
Because that was the talk of the world.
There were some people, too, that we found that didn't understand about 127, but they had heard about the fur ban or the fishing ban or whatever, and then they became educated on 127. And it was pretty remarkable because the average person, you would think, would pay more attention to a ballot initiative to take hunting privileges away than more so a fur ban when it had to deal with cowboy hats and fishing lures and Native American crafts. And that was just in the city and county of Denver.
Right.
And so when people said, "Oh, are you involved in that?" And I said, "Yeah, that and." Yeah. And they said, "And what?" And I'm thinking, well, the other one was the great big one.
Yeah, the big one, the 127.
Exactly.
Yeah. Well, from afar, just admiring what you guys put together, the strategy you crafted. You guys went about this so much differently than a lot of the other ballot initiatives, defenses, whatever. We're always on the defense. So to see that many people come together, whether they were residents or non-residents, and say, you know what, this is kind of this is a battle that's so critical. It could be the pivot point of where this goes going forward, one way or the other.
Yeah.
And whether you wanted that responsibility or not, it kind of landed on your lap and that of a few others.
Yeah, you could stand around. I joked about it before, Randy. I thought they were saying brains and they were really saying train, and I think I got run over by it. And it was probably one of the hardest things that we had to do because we'd been advocating for these sort of things and been victorious for the better part of 7+ years with CRWM. Even though we'd played in this landscape for 15 years prior to that. Mm-hmm. But the average person doesn't have a clue of what it takes to run and be successful on a ballot initiative.
Right.
And for those people that don't understand it, there's 26 states that have ballot initiative opportunities for people, voters in the state, proponents of different measures to bring to the voters. Some of those might be constitutional and some of them might be statutory.
Right.
When we said this is, and keep in mind, this is just 3.5 or 4 years after we voted on wolves in the state.
Right.
And the difference being is wolves was to bring something in, and the majority of people said, "Oh, that'll never happen." But as soon as you started mentioning to take something away, a lot of the people, and I said this in some of our campaign speeches and stuff, a lot of the people, when we lost trapping in 1996 and spring bear hunting in 1992, a lot of the people that we were dealing with last year were 30 years old or 35 years old. So they never knew that we had what we had that was taken away. And then when we brought wolves in by voter initiative in 2020, they thought, oh, well, they won't take lion hunting away. They won't take bobcat trapping away. And because they'd never experienced losing anything.
Right.
And a lot of the people that were, well, if they were my age or your age in 92 or 96, well, they were mostly dead last year, So, they've been 85 or 90 years old last year. And so you're dealing with a completely different demographic and a dynamic of individuals that you stop and think 30 years ago when we lost those other two deals, we didn't have social media.
Right.
Most people didn't have cell phones, or if you did, it was a great big bag phone, looked like a backpack.
Yeah.
And so things changed dramatically, but we utilized the tools that were available and the knowledge and expertise that we'd been able to accumulate and see what we could do with it. And I think that we helped set a playbook and a roadmap that the antis for sure paid attention to because we kicked the crap out of them.
Yeah.
But then our side did as well because they weren't really sure how to do what we did, and we didn't know to start with. We had a pretty good idea, but we didn't know it either.
Yeah. Well, I remember sitting in on some of the first calls you guys had, and thankful that you guys invited me to be the fly on the wall, and a few of us from out of state, just listen and see what you guys were doing, where we could maybe help. But the first thing that stood out to me was, this is different. This is strategy. This is real communication strategy, other than 45 little groups out in your state or in a state saying, well, we're going to do this. We're going to have a bake sale. We're going to throw that. No, you guys put it together. You hired the best that you could, and you were realistic about what the budget was going to be. I don't think people understand what it costs to defeat a ballot initiative.
No.
Or to run a ballot. If you wanted to change something via ballot initiative or defeat it, we're talking $5 million or more.
Or more.
Yeah. And it's airtime buy, it's billboard buy, it's all this messaging.
Yeah.
And when people hear that, they're like, it can't cost that much. It costs a lot.
Television advertisements during the election campaign, especially on a presidential election year, are 10 to 25 times more than what they would have been on a non-election year. You know, it would be similar to if the Denver Broncos were to make it back to the Super Bowl and you wanted to advertise in Denver during the Super Bowl. It's going to cost you a hell of a lot more than if you just wanted a preseason game. Yeah. And that's what we'd been dealing with, was preseason games. And while we'd been effective, the best time for somebody to run a ballot initiative is during a governor's race or a presidential race.
Right. They know
the worst time to have to fight a ballot initiative is during a governor's race and a presidential race.
Yeah.
And I mean, the costs are almost insurmountable. When you told people that, you know, we needed, you know, $5 million for this or $100,000 for that or $50,000 for this, they just looked at you.
Right.
I mean, and just in the initial stages of what was spent from September of 23, when the ballot initiative was first filed, up until January 31st of 24, when the ballot initiative was certified and that's the direction they decided to go, there was almost $300,000 spent in legal fees through the Secretary of State, Supreme Court, and the Title Board.
Yeah.
And people went, what?
Yeah.
That's the real cost. And we were prepared from a CRWM standpoint, but we had to build up an armament and convince everybody else that if we were successful getting through those stages like what we needed to, that we had to actually raise substantial money. It wasn't over in January 31st of 24. It just started.
Right.
And I think once we started to build up the message through individuals and groups and influencers and podcasters and industry leaders and stuff, people started to pay attention and go, holy crap, maybe there's a chance that these guys can actually win.
Yeah.
But I got to say, we wouldn't have been able to win if it wasn't been for, you know, guys like you and Ranella's and the Howl for Wildlife guys and the Cable Smiths and the Sloan Browns. And I mean, everybody that came out of the woodwork to help us message-wise was tenfold. And then we had the NGOs and we had the individual industry leaders and the businesses and stuff. It didn't happen by happenstance. It wasn't by accident.
Right. No, and you're always quick to put the credit to everybody else, Dan, and I appreciate that, and I think that's what everybody likes about Dan, is they know he's gonna kind of be like, no, this person, all that being said, it was remarkable. I hope that we can find ways that what you've built in Colorado, what you've learned in this process, can be expanded to other states, because you guys had no longer defeated this. Then the same groups came to your commission, came to your legislature. These groups aren't giving up.
No.
Sometimes it'll be a ballot initiative. Sometimes it'll be a lawsuit. Sometimes it'll be trying to get something with your commission or with your legislature. And I know people in Montana are like, Newber, you are just so wound up about Colorado and Washington. If I have to listen to one more podcast of you with someone from one of those states, I'm just going to hang up. Well, I've been around this game long enough to know that when something works in one state, it gets copied to other states. And when you guys lost your Wolf ballot initiative, it really invigorated the other side, if you want to call it other side. They had some successes in Washington, and it really invigorated them. I know those methodologies, those tactics, those processes, and those people and their money are going to be in my state of Montana someday. And as people are like, that never happened in Montana. Well, I'm not taking a chance on it.